What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the BlockHash podcast. Today, I have another guest on the show with SQD, Dmitry, and they're going to talk about how they are changing the Web3 data layer and what that actually means. Dmitry, welcome to the show. Happy to have you here to talk about SQD today. How you doing, man?
Hey everyone. I'm Dmitry, technical co-founder at SQD. Thanks a lot for inviting me to BlockHash, and yeah, really looking forward to share what we're building at SQD and how we are transforming the Web3 data layer.
Absolutely. Before we kick it off, I'm sure people would love to get to know you a little bit more. Can you tell us a bit about your personal story and how you got into the Web3 space and maybe how some of that led up to SQD as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that probably by the crypto standards, I am more like a veteran, as I personally bought my Bitcoin in 2014 at RuneScape, I think. But back then, it was really like an experiment, and I think I immediately lost interest and lost access to my keys. And only 3 years later, I kind of got back to that simply because I saw that the price was skyrocketing. And like, what the fuck? Probably there is something in there. And I started to dig and actually read the white paper by Satoshi. And back then I was a postdoc researcher in Budapest, working with a very bright mind of our generation, Andrew Reddy, a Nobel Prize winner on different math problems. And obviously, the idea is that there is actually some kind of like magic math that is also related to economy and to the actual money. Picked up my attention, and only then, reading the white paper, I figured out that actually it is possible to create the value out of nothing. So before, everything related to crypto appeared like a scam or something that is easily to rug. But finally, when all the pieces of this puzzle came together, I realized that, yeah, okay, now I actually got it. And I decided that from now on, I really, really want to get into this space. So, like, how do you actually start, right? So you're basically an outsider. Like, what you can do is just like read research papers, like, and do math. I did have also some engineering background. So, what I started to do is simply get into some protocols, read carefully their white papers because no one really does that, and write some research on Medium. It was quite popular back then. And there were also this company Misari that's been only starting back then, so it was like an open call for community contributors, and I also joined that. So that's how I got into like doing my first steps in this space. And at some point, I just randomly bought a ticket and flew to Berlin to DappCon. I think it was like a pretty massive event with a lot of side events, and I randomly went to some rooftop cocktail party simply because everyone was invited, I guess, right? And I just like started to talk to people, and it turned out that surprisingly to me, a lot of people actually knew even less than me. So there was like, oh, you guy actually like know how things work on the consensus level. Come, like talk to our office. This is actually how I met Marcel, who is back then was building a protocol for IoT, so basically like a deep pin network. But back then, no one was aware about deep pin. It wasn't really hot. And yeah, so I met his brother, who was like a very very talented engineer and a very passionate team. And yeah, we started to work together. And at some point, we started to build the novel consensus protocol, the data. But unfortunately, the bear market came, and since like all the money was in actually IOTA and like some volatile assets, actually, unfortunately, we had to close the shop. But it was like a very, very valuable experience, and I was 100% sure that I'm not gonna leave the space, even though I have to. look for another job. And this is how I ended up in a project called JStream. They were building a chain, a substrate chain, and essentially a YouTube on the Web3 rails with open access to the content without any kind of possibility to censor the videos, and a lot of stuff was uh, on chain. So like description of the videos, like everything that you actually see logging into YouTube, send the video itself, right? And I was building the indexing thing for this so that you can actually easily uh, show this information on the UI. Because if you like pull this data from the blockchain directly, it's incredibly slow, and you cannot really do much. Like you cannot, for example, query or like search your favorite videos. It's just impossible. Blockchain doesn't support this. So and at that very moment, it turned out that actually like pulling this data from the blockchain nodes is really pain in the ass. Because the blockchain nodes are very slow. You can only get the data from a specific block. So basically, every time you want to change something, you actually have to rescan the whole network and like go through millions of requests. And it's simply impossible to build anything because you cannot really iterate, right? So and yeah, the obvious solution is to like, why don't we have something more efficient rather than the blockchain nodes, so that you can just like pull this data and index this, transform this, and let the RPC nodes do the blockchain job, the consensus, and let's like the data be somewhere else. This is how this whole idea is that the Web3 actually needs a scalable, decentralized read layer so that you can build all the infra on top of it, like indexing, like UI, SDKs, everything that normally you kind of go to an RPC provider like Infura or Alchemy for. So yeah, I guess we will come back to like what we do at SQD in general, but essentially, this is how this idea came about when I was like at JoyStream, and simply after like 2 3 months, I reconnected with Marcel, who was like searching for other stuff in Web3. So he suggested that maybe we can like revive the previous project. He was going to say, okay, actually, I have a really good idea. I know that there is a demand because a lot of projects in the space were building similar stuff and were interested in the solution that we built internally. And we immediately got our first angel check and like started to hire the first people. And I think just in 3 months we closed our seed round because it's like, obviously was very much in need. And after that, we like scale it to EVM, then to Solana. Now we also support Fuel, Starknet, Tron, and like on and on. Yeah, but I guess we will get back to that.
Very nice, man. It's cool how people get connected in this space too, especially with the cocktail parties on the rooftops. There's a lot of those. Been to a lot myself. That's awesome. But with SQD, what's your guys' core mission, I guess? What are you guys trying to accomplish with SQD, and what's the aim and the goal?
Yeah, so the core vision is really get rid of the RPC and the blockchain nodes as the way that you get the data, and make the Web3 data accessible at any scale with the same sovereignty and security guarantees as if you were running your own node. So something that right now is either or, like either you kind of own this data and own the run node, or you like go, for example, to do analytics or like to some centralized provider, and that's it, right? Our goal is to basically have sovereign access without any compromises. So that's what we're building.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on the architecture for SQD Network, specifically on areas of like security and scalability, and maybe also how you can maintain that while still keeping the decentralization intact?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, this is really like a long project, right? And we are only at the very beginning of this path. So we just launched our main node like 3 months ago, and we are about to release a major update, which is also on the network side, on the client side, how we should consume this data. We'll talk about this later. But generally speaking, any like big problem starts with figuring out what is the right way to store the data. Basically, how do you actually build the underlying database? So why, to begin with, we are not really happy with how the RPC blockchain works, right? Simply because the way that like RPC nodes are designed to do blockchain computations and keep the state of the blockchain. So they have their own internal storage, and essentially it's like a uh, special purpose database that is inside that is very much designed to squeeze every TPS number. So basically, you can write this data as fast as possible, maintaining the consensus, like updating this like cryptographic hashes and so on and so on and so on. This database by design cannot really be used for other read intensive things. So it's really like a engineering kind of trade-off. So either you do one thing good or like do everything very subpar, right? So that's why it is like a dead end trying to squeeze the read needs into the RPC box that we have right now. At the same time, you cannot just extract this data into some, I don't know, like Postgres database simply because you lose immediately all the like liveness and other security guarantees. So at the end of the day, what you really need is to build a general, like a special purpose database, but in this case, specifically designed for extracting this data and being able to keep terabytes, rather petabytes of all the historical data in a very efficient way because the amount of data grows exponentially. And for example, Solana is already like hundreds of terabytes, right? So you cannot expect to the validators, for example, to bear the cost of serving this data in addition to securing the network, right? So actually, they are busy securing the network rather than just like serving millions of requests every day. So that's it, right? So then it comes down to a specific engineering problem. So how do you actually design a distributed, decentralized database which is capable of keeping petabytes of data, which is also provides you cryptographic guarantees and economic incentives so that you can actually get as much data as you want at a very low operational cost. And then you basically start to solve this from the first principles. And here it all boils down to figuring out like, how exactly you keep this data, how exactly you distribute this data. And we got a lot of inspiration from the Web2 world, of course, where like this big data has been around for tens of years. So we've chosen Parquet files as a storage format. Then we put the token incentive, so basically to Uberize the infrastructure so that we can actually like, scale to thousands of nodes that we currently have on the SQD network without really uh, adding any kind of capital constraints on the operations. Then you have to think about the validation, the economic incentives that you actually force the nodes to behave correctly because you do not control the operation. So yeah, it's really like a long-term engineering problem. We're at the very beginning, but we already can give the performance which is hundreds uh, orders of magnitude, I would say 100x more efficient than, for example, indexing the data from RPC nodes. And we were just like getting started.
And then is the Squid SDK, is that something that's also an important part of that for developers?
Yeah, absolutely. So to be like clear, SQD, the network is the base layer, and everything else is just different things that depend on this, and it's more like an ecosystem, right? So, and also there is a Subsquid Labs GmbH, which is basically a developer company which also develops the network and the tool. So Squid SDK, what is that? So Squid SDK is an open source set of tools to work with raw on-chain data, basically with everything that you find in a block explorer or like looking directly into RPC nodes. So the SQD network, by and large, serves exactly the data in the very same format of the RPC node, but in a more efficient way. And in order to get any sense of this data, you still need to decode this, transform this, like put it into some database like Postgres, like built an API, something that, for example, people used to do with subgraphs. But that was just like super slow because subgraphs take this data from RPC. Again, the key bottleneck, taking this data from RPC. We essentially developed an open source TypeScript based framework that allows you to build any kind of application backend at any complexity, very flexible, like modular, at the same time leverage the full power of SQD network. So essentially it's like dissecting like a very complex thing, which is indexing into small pieces, doing the data part basically the best one can do on the market in a decentralized way, and also providing the tools to work with this data. And the Squid SDK is like an open source part of what can be also I don't know, like Ponder or simple like script with like ethers.js or bugme or Vim. So basically, there are a lot of tools to work with the on-chain data, for example, in the EVM world, less so in Solana, and even less so, for example, in Tron. But they all have some limitations and drawbacks, and we basically put together our own kind of opinionated set of tools that is designed to work nicely with the interface that our SQD network provides, namely like work in batches and vectorized format, aggregate a lot of data in a single swap, optimize here and there. So basically squeezing a lot of like performance things where it's kind of hard to do on your own, especially if you do it in the first place. So, but at the end of the day, it's really up to the developer what tool to use. Yeah.
And then what are some examples of things that are being built, applications being built with SQD Network? Do you have any that you can highlight as some really good use cases, kind of paint a picture for people?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as a rule, like in general, the biggest applications are built as the combination of data sourcing from the SQD network and Squid SDK as a toolkit for building the backend, and then Postgres and Hasura or Postgre file as a GraphQL server on top. So at each stage, there are multiple options to choose, and different teams take different trade-offs. I would highlight the biggest to be like one of the biggest, like Shiba Inu, GMX, Decentraland, um, like a bunch of others, like NFT marketplaces, like interface that provide like data on social trading. So a lot of things where you actually need access to a bunch of historical transactions and logs. Also, where you want to dynamically aggregate different data from multiple chains. Also, applications where you need real-time data and where you are dealing with high TPS networks, for example, Solana or Arbitrum or Base. Like Chain, even though still in testnet, has like a huge growing community, and it's also like pretty high TPS. So whenever you hit like I would say more than 100K historical transactions and events that you want to work with, you are starting to feel how slow getting the data in a traditional way becomes. And this is basically at that point people start to see around like, okay, what do we have in the space like to fill our indexing needs? And like a lot of people really find out SQD at that stage and come to us. At the same time, there are companies that, for example, do analytics and simply want to get blockchain data into their own data warehouse. And getting this data from RPC is expensive and not reliable. So they simply come to us and use our interface to get this data like as soon as possible and like fill their own database. This is also fine. And yeah, analytics, dashboards, live backends, tracking, addresses tracking, custody, pretty much everything where you need reliable access to blockchain data is our game.
Okay, cool. And then if you want to build on, SQD and you're a developer, is there a good documentation, community resources that they can dive into to kind of learn a bit more and get familiar with some of the tools and the sets that are available?
Yeah, absolutely. So the key resource is docs.sqd.dev. I guess we will leave like a separate link somewhere. Also, we have a very active chat, which is Squid Devs. It's a Telegram community channel, dev only, like no bullshit. And also, we are super active, basically figuring out like what is needed and helping directly the developers. At the same time, there are literally dozens of examples. We have a separate GitHub repos for with templates and examples, and any GitHub repo can be used as a scaffolding project. So we have this special tool called SQD CLI. So it's more like a command line interface for dealing with the first stages of the development and also for deploying into SQD Cloud. And you can use it to bootstrap the project from any example or template, play around. Everything is reproducible locally, so you don't have to like register there anywhere or like get any kind of API keys. Simply clone and run. It works out of the box. So a lot of things you can do, like everything actually you can do locally. You can then go on and like host it yourself in production. Really, no strings attached. And yeah, at the same time, we have hosted platform for people who would prefer to their infrastructure to be cared of by ourselves.
Okay, cool. And then if you're a user and you're not necessarily a developer or have that skill set, but you want to participate in SQD, can you do that through nodes or delegation? Do you guys have those things available as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So just go to network.sqd.dev, and this is our official network app. And there are two options there. So you can delegate to one of the existing nodes there and start earning like around 10% yield on your SQD. Or you can actually run a node. It's fairly straightforward and super cheap compared to other things because the hardware requirements are very modest. And then you get, of course, like a lot higher APY. The interface is really easy. So just like lock SQD and register and follow the instructions, and you're done. And also, there are options with liquid staking that are yeah about to go live, and yeah, we will be very proud to announce it in a collaboration with Thunderhat.
What's on your guys' roadmap for 2025 going into the new year? Anything new that you guys want to issue and unveil with SQD? What can you unveil for users and for developers out there?
Yeah, absolutely. We have actually a lot of things planned, even for the rest of the year, and even more planned for 2025. So, for the rest of the year, first of all, for developers, we are going to roll out the portal release, the first phase of it, which is a new way to access the data from the network, which is intelligent and optimized for performance. So we expect that it will boost the synchronization speed up to 10x, simply because we do a lot more intelligent batching of the SQD network requests, and also it has like a lot of performance optimizations like local buffers, like streaming, and also the interface itself becomes a lot cleaner. So basically, you have like a fire hose of data, there's a stream that you can consume, and probably the speed of this is only limited by the pace at which you can consume this data. And it will have an immediate impact to the existing users. And first, we roll out into like the first cohorts for beta testers, and we will open up the wait list probably like by the beginning of December, and that is the first phase. At the same time, we have like a secret plan for something called named SQD.fun, which is more like I would say DGN, non-technical people. Really, no comments about that, but we are looking forward to having really fun a really fun experience here, and obviously with some Christmas giveaways and gifts. And then January, this is where we are opening this portal thing to the public, and probably the biggest announcement of making the data real time. So far, the network supports the data with a specific lag. It's by design. And with this like new portal, we basically enable real-time data, and the latency is controlled by the user. So basically, you can get as close to the data as possible, collocating your own portal, for example, to the node, or like using one of the servers that are out there. It's really a game changer because it's gonna completely eliminate the need for sourcing the data from RPC, even for real-time use cases. And we know that it's like a huge pain. A lot of our customers were suffering, for example, when Arbitrum was under load and RPC providers were just like simply going down, not being able to keep up with this. We are gonna address this big time. Uh, that is short term. And for the rest of 2025, a lot of things planned. So first of all, we are going to put a lot of metadata on chain, so that opening up SQD network for on-chain applications as well. Also, hopefully, we will be able to make it open for external data providers as well. This is like a very huge for us because I think using historical data from smart contracts is a very big market and very, I would say, needed thing because and this is where we have the biggest mode because not everyone actually has the historical data from Solana and hundreds of VM networks in a single place that you can simply query and like get it on chain. That's one thing. And another thing is tokenomics 2.0. So as long as we see the first bootstrapping period for the SQD network completed and like a steady demand for the data, we will start to reduce the emission of SQD and replace it with less volatile assets. So then basically the rewards will be paid in a separate token, and also the data itself will be consumed in a slightly different way, so it's getting more and more balanced. So roughly speaking, right now, and like probably like for the first half of 2025, is probably the best way to secure the bag of SQD, similar to how the first years of Bitcoin were basically the golden era for miners to get like SQD allocation. So, sorry, for Bitcoin, right? So because over the time the Bitcoin rewards like getting halved and less, and also the competition grows. A similar situation is in SQD networks. So basically, like right now, it's you can get like really good and lucrative deal running a nodes, for example, or like staking or delegating before we entered this saturation phase, I would say.
Awesome, man. Dmitry, thank you so much today. It's been great getting to learn more about SQD and what you guys are doing, and obviously the data layer in Web3 is very important. There's so much on-chain data being compiled these days, so what you guys do is very important. Um, let's do it again soon in the near future. We'd love to catch up with you guys again in 2025 and see where you guys are at and what you're working on. I feel like this industry is about to, really pop off again and get really exciting. I think Bitcoin's at like 27, 28,000 today, which is insane. So a lot of innovation, a lot of cool things will probably start happening as we get into the new year. So yeah, we'll definitely do it again.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for having me. And yeah, the year is not ended, and I'm pretty much looking forward to the Santa rally. And let's stay in touch. A lot of things happening. Follow us on Twitter, on Telegram, and yeah, I promise they're gonna be a lot of fun by Christmas and during Christmas. Cheers.